Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, what's going on with crypto? What's the state of play with meme coins? And is there a Trump dump? And is the market crashing, or is it just in one of its cyclical lulls? Well, Katie Byrne, money editor of the Irish Independent, is here with me. Now, crypto's in a bit of a slump for some people, not for others. At least one gang is making some money out of crypto. Donald Trump's meme coin. It appears, his crypto project has made $350 million from its launch. What's going on there?
So about 4 days before the inauguration, he announced his own meme coin, Trump coin. There was definitely a sort of a pattern of who got in first. So you could see that people had got the news at least 24 hours before retail got there. So it went up significantly. I think the all-time high was about like $75.
Yeah.
It's now trading at about 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
So terrible for people who got in at the point that the news went out. So it went out on Truth Social, it went out on X. But really at that point, you could see that the insiders had gone in, made their money and exited.
So was this a rug pull then, do we think?
A rug pull, like in the traditional sense, it tends to be developer-led. So it wasn't the developer who pulled the rug, so to speak, but if it was a rug pull, it was a slow pull, as they call it, or a slow rug.
Yeah.
But it certainly smacks of insider trading, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, like, we can talk about meme coins and what meme coins are, but with this meme coin, this was really just money that people were paying down to support Donald Trump, wasn't it? I mean, did people really expect to make money out of this?
Yeah, I think everyone
so?
went in. Yeah, I don't think it was this kind of token of respect or support to the Trump campaign. Now, maybe that's because I'm not in it, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe if you're in certain states in America, maybe that was the feeling or the sentiment there.
Because he sold a whole load of NFTs. You remember that period when he was selling these NFTs? He made millions of dollars out of it. But I think it was a little bit, the sensibility there was that people were buying them as a kind of a means of support. I get you. Maybe even to get around funding rules.
Yeah, but at least with an NFT, you've a JPEG to look at. There's something, it's not tangible, but at least there's something sort of like a little bit of a trophy to it or a mascot but
I've found myself defending NFTs a lot in the bad old days. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it kind of goes to the heart of what actually art is. And, you know, if you can justify, you know, spending $100 million on a painting because you know the provenance says that it was written or painted by somebody in a certain period, and you're deriving meaning from that, why can't you derive a certain meaning from legitimate, unique ownership of a particular thing at the time? That's a debate that we had.
I'm with you. You know, like provenance, authenticity, authorship. You know, if I have a handbag now, and there are NFTs now for handbags because fakes are getting so good. Yeah. They're so good, and we're going into the deep fake age.
For a handbag.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things will have to go in the blockchain, and that's before we even get into the murky world of art and fakes in the art world. I think NFTs have a purpose. I don't know if it's cat gifts, but I think for ownership, I think they definitely have a purpose.
So back to Trump and his meme coin. So he clearly has made money out of this one way or the other, but he's not the only one in his family, right? So Melania,
she jumped in about a day later.
Yeah.
So there was like a rotation of profit. So the liquidity got pulled out of that, went down to Melania. And then meanwhile, in what people call the Solana casino, which is this absolute Wild West. Like crypto's a Wild West, but this is just, it makes normal crypto look like a retirement village. Yeah. So in that world where it's very DIY, it's very instantaneous, where there's like 40,000 coins made a day, there was people just making every iteration of Trump. You know, every part of the family tree, every pet that was ever owned was exploited.
I think for anyone buying or looking at the market, is this a zero-sum game? Like if I go and spend money on a barren Trump coin, is that potentially money that I could have spent buying, you know, Ether or Bitcoin or Solana?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it just speaks to the age we live in that bizarrely, even though it's the most highly volatile market that we've ever known, by that I mean your traditional crypto, it's actually too slow for some people. Like they actually want to get in and have these radical pumps and these absolutely crushing dumps. That's the world that a lot of people are moving into now.
Yeah.
So yeah, should they have bought ETH? Yeah, but they're just not. That's been sitting. It's just kind of gone sideways for quite some time. So
Yeah.
it's not giving people that.
I was looking at
dopamine hit.
Ether and Bitcoin and Solana, in fact, and they're all down, 20, 30% over the last 6-8 weeks.
Yeah.
Is there a deeper thing there going on, or are we in a cyclical lull there?
I actually think it's really hard to say because there's crashes and then there's the crash.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So there's the crash, which happens at the end of every bull cycle, and that leads us into the bear market. And that's the violent one. Do you know what I mean? That's where you go into fetal position and go and question all your life choices, and you wait a few years and people come out. Yeah, it lasts that long. And then within a bull cycle, there's lots of mini crashes. So I actually think it's quite hard to say, but I do think it is linked to the announcement of the strategic crypto reserve.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute. So that is people might be familiar with the idea of a reserve that governments have, that central banks have, states have, and they have it for strategic purposes, for good civic, political purposes. So the US has been talking about a crypto reserve. This is something that came on the agenda a few months before the election.
Yeah.
And I thought at the time that it was a way for Trump's campaign to give something back to the crypto billionaires who were contributing hard cash to his campaign. Because Trump, after all, was a total crypto skeptic. He thought it was a scam. He called it a scam many times. I've seen him quoted when asked about his own meme coin, saying he has no idea how it works, but he made money out of it, so fine.
Yeah.
So now he has introduced this notion of a crypto reserve, but then over the last week, it emerged that they wouldn't be buying any crypto for this reserve. They would just be using the seized crypto they already have from criminals or whoever to act as a kind of a pseudo reserve. I don't even think that's a reserve.
I think I had to fact check. I thought they were tentatively looking at the possibility of buying crypto for it. So that's early doors. But then alongside that, so it's seized assets, and it's just going to sit there and gather value, I think, is the idea of it. But it's a statement, isn't it? It's a geopolitical statement. It's like an arms race. It's like kind of like gathering weaponry.
Because when Trump was elected in November, Bitcoin went on a rally. Crypto went on a rally. It rose maybe 10%, something like that. It's now fallen about 20%, 25%. So whatever happened in the interim, we've kind of have this narrative of Trump being good for crypto. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. Maybe we're just in a natural downturn, down cycle at the moment. But it certainly, all this talk of reserve doesn't seem to have helped. And what's also not helping is Trump himself talking about recession, and that we might we might have to enter a recession, because crypto is kind of linked with the economy.
I think everyone thought he was going to come along and we were going to go into this gangbusters, everything up period in crypto, and that absolutely hasn't materialized. I think all we've seen is that Trump and the people closest to him are capitalizing on kind of buying the rumors and selling the news. And we've seen that time and time again. And you could even argue that it happened before the announcement of Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. So a week before that announcement, Doge doubles, So you can see that probably looked promising at the beginning. It was like, okay, so he's great for crypto because Doge is always linked to Trump already, But actually, when you look back, you can kind of see all these essentially insider trading moves that have happened from that into Trump, into Melania, and into the announcement of the strategic reserve. Because again, everything starts to pump before the announcement. People jump on and there's a big red candle.
Yeah, it's a bit tawdry, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheap, the whole thing. In terms of meme coins, like when did these start becoming a thing? They've been around for a few years, right? And I'm thinking of Doge, for example, was one, Dogecoin. Shibu, something or other. Yeah. There's a few of them. But does it take much for one of those meme coins to get going? Does it take it does?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're all community based. They start off community based. So it takes a huge amount of hype and strategic marketing on social media. The groups will form and kind of the developer is there from the beginning, but groups will form and take on various marketing functions. They'll interact in a Telegram forum. It gets bigger and bigger. People are out. Essentially, what the term in crypto is pumping your own bags, you know, so they're or like hyping their own bags, shilling their bags, so spreading the word. But what often happens early doors, and I'll have to double check this, I think SHIB was initially a rug pull. Which is interesting. So basically, the developer oftentimes will rug pull their own coin. And then you get what's called a community takeover. So people then will come and take over the coin and start kind of promoting it again. So it takes it's considerable, but it's a community effort.
Yeah, and that word community, like when you say it, I hear with a capital C on that word community.
Yeah,
because you know more about crypto than I do because you've been in and around this world for.
I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? Community with a capital C?
Well, it's just the way you say community. So this is community as in a concept
cult.
that is familiar.
I'd say maybe the C is for cult.
Okay. But I mean, what is a cult and what is a community? If enough people get around a table and decide that something is valuable, it becomes valuable. If it because that's the whole basis of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we decide that Bitcoin was worth anything? But meme coins are almost a particular thing in themselves, because for us to decide that Doge or SHIB is worth something, that's you're really getting into the weeds there.
Big time. Like I would argue, okay, so a meme it has no fundamental utility. That's how it's defined. But I would argue that almost everything in cryptocurrency is a meme coin, because they don't actually they have a lot of vision and a grand plan of what they want to be. But in terms of actual utility, a lot of them are fundamentally driven by hype. And that's what drives a meme coin. So I would argue like almost everything's a meme coin. And I think in this cycle, you're seeing that more than ever. There's less of that like, I'm in it for the technology, and more of like, just jump on.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think there's an acceptance this time around that it's just gambling.
Yeah, because there are actually some things you can actually buy with Bitcoin. I think Ferrari will sell you a car for Bitcoin.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a few things. There are a few actual vendors who will sell you something for Bitcoin. I know Stripe was experimenting with a couple of years ago. Then they kind of ditched that, but then they came back in with more and going down the stable coin route, so pegged really to currencies.
Sure. Yeah.
But Bitcoin has gotten to the point now where I think we can fairly say, given its institutional interests, like there are central banks now
ETFs
holding Bitcoin. I'm sure the Criminal Assets Bureau here probably have quite a bit in Bitcoin. But the point is they're holding that as if it's a valuable asset. Banks are now starting to trade Bitcoin. They're starting to accept retail in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin pensions? Yeah.
Bitcoin pension.
Yeah, no, pension probably, maybe singular, but certainly, there's certainly one group doing it for sure.
So we can sort of think of Bitcoin as something that does have recognized value to a lot of important institutions that sort of regulate our value system. Meme coins, though. I mean, what the hell? Like, as you say, it's just a casino.
Yeah, absolutely. A very colourful casino.
Yeah. Is it fun, though?
Are meme coins fun? I mean, I guess if you get in with... I'd say it's kind of fun if you're in on the ground floor of a meme coin and you're part of that whole process. I would say maybe that's fun. But it's definitely the meme coin cycle that we're in. Like at the start, it was Doge and SHIB. And now there's about like 20 meme coins. I think about 20 in the top 100 cryptocurrencies, which is crazy.
Racking my brain to think of any Irish-founded meme coins. I couldn't think of any.
Either can I.
No.
I'm sure there are, though. I'm sure everyone's tried, because it's so easy to make a meme coin. Now you could do it. We could go upstairs and do it.
Have you ever tried it?
No. But yeah, I'm certainly aware of how it's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure there's been plenty. Do you know what I mean? Of very, very DIY attempts.
Yeah. You are the money editor in the Irish Independent. And when we talk about crypto, I'm always aware of a kind of a fiduciary responsibility I feel I have to listeners and readers not to hype up crypto, because crypto is a very divisive thing in the media world as well. A lot of my colleagues hate crypto. They think it's nothing but a pyramid scheme and a scam. I have a slightly more nuanced view. I don't disagree with them, but on the other hand, I think that it does have residual value, and it's worth talking about because it's there.
Yeah.
But from your point of view as the money editor, when people ask you about advice for crypto, you must feel like running a mile, do you? Or
yeah, absolutely, because you do have a duty, you know, and you just have to imagine, like, even today, you and I are chatting about debt crosses and everything before we started this. Like, is this about to be the big crash? You know, can you imagine giving somebody advice and then
well, even
that crash occurring? You know, it's so
even
volatile.
6 weeks ago, I mean, Bitcoin was at about $101,000, $102,000. Now it's at $76,000, $77,000, $78,000. So in 2 months, someone would have lost 20%.
Yeah.
Of their value.
But I think at the same time, because everyone is like, oh my God, it's all crashed and blah. I do think we have to zoom out a little bit, because since January 2023, in about 2 years, it's gone from roughly $20,000 to $80,000. That's a 4x in 2 years. So when you zoom out, it's gone up massively. Do you know what I mean? In a very short period of time.
Yeah. So if you got in at the right time, regardless of your ethical considerations or anything else, you would actually have made money. Any tips in that context, in that cautionary context? Any tips for anyone thinking of crypto? Like, how should they be thinking about this? What sort of caution should they exercise? Is it respectable now to think about this in terms of their normal investment vehicles through their firms, or what do you think about all of that?
I would say move backwards. So start at the day that the crash comes, because it's so chaotic. No one knows what's going to happen, but there's only one thing we know: the crash will come, and it will be violent. That will lead us into it always is that leads us into the bear market. So I'd start from that moment. How are you going to react that day when you see everything that you've been slowly kind of building up, just absolutely like dwindle to what looks like nothing? So are you going to panic sell? So you have to ask yourself questions, or will you have the ability to sit in your hands and say, I'm going to wait a few years now? So I think you have to ask yourself questions like that. Likewise, what's your investment window? Because a lot of people, they're in it to just go up only, you know, and it's not like that. So what do you want to get out of this? Are you in this until the end of the year? Are you in it for the next 5 years, the next 10 years? Can you take a few cycles? So I think people have to ask themselves questions like that. They have to know what they want from it, because if you don't...
I don't know as much as about crypto as you, but I do, and I've said this before on this podcast. For me, the fact that crypto has survived, and Bitcoin in particular, has survived over a certain period of time, means that I think it's likely to survive over another 5 or 10 years. That's what I think. And that being the case, I've had people on this podcast before who have predicted, 100, when it was at $5,000, they predicted $100,000, which would have been a huge, unthinkable leap. I've had people who've predicted $300,000, $500 price ranges. And given the trajectory that it has undergone, I can't disagree with them. I find, logically, if I had to bet my house one way or the other over a 5 or a 10-year period, I think it probably is going to go. But that's me being an ignoramus, not knowing much about finance. So it's not advice. But that's the way I tend to think about it. Because a lot of the arguments to knock down Bitcoin in particular, they just haven't worked. There is clearly, to me, a fundamental group that's large enough among people that believe that Bitcoin has value, and nothing has happened. Crashes, political scandals, hacks, data breaches, pandemic, pretty much everything. So I think it probably will survive for another 5 or 10 years. And I'm saying this, by the way, I don't own crypto, so I'm not trying to pump anything here. But I do think that is probably, that's the way I see it. But people who are anytime I ask anybody with any kind of financial fiduciary role, they run a mile from saying something like that, because they have to, because they can't be seen to be promoting something. Anyway, lastly, your tips. Any cautions you'd have for prospective in investors? Things like two-factor authentication, anything like that?
Yeah, we'll definitely stick that on. Use a wallet, obviously.
Yeah. Like a cold wallet. Because a lot of people, I suspect in Ireland, when somebody dabbles in something like crypto or Bitcoin, they're doing it probably through like the likes of Revolut.
Yeah.
As much as anything else.
Yeah, and then probably not getting the best rates.
Not getting the best rates. And also there is this ongoing, I suppose, skepticism of online wallets as well. I don't know if that's a thing or not.
Yeah, there is the idea of kind of getting, an actual tangible wallet. You definitely get a lot of people. But I mean, there's a lot of wallets attached like to the actual trading platforms, which I would argue would do the job. Any other?
We all remember that story about the Welsh guy. This is about 7 or 8 years ago, when I think Bitcoin had risen to about, a couple of $1,000s, but the amount of crypto that he had meant that he would have realized something like $300 million, and his PC, was a HP desktop computer, was thrown out by his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And there was this whole story about whether he could raise enough money to buy the dump in Wales.
Whoa.
To excavate. Because even if he bought it for, say, 20 million, there was a good chance he'd find the hard drive.
Yeah.
And actually realize the gain.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a tip. Tell your girlfriend or your wife or your partner, because a lot of people don't. And then you wonder, like, if they get run over by a car one day,
Well, divorces as well.
Yeah. Well,
that's an issue. That's all. About once every couple of months, there's always a media issue about breakups, marriages, divorces, and crypto holdings. Just as there is in terms of Criminal Assets Bureau, which we mentioned earlier. Anyway, there's a gazillion other angles we could get to, but we're out of time. Katie Byrne, money editor at the Irish Independent, thank you so much for joining us today. John Smith was on audio. JJ Clark produced this episode, and I'm Adrian Weckler, and you've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show, and we'll talk to you soon.